High Overlord Zixtal stood on the command bridge of the Craxty flagship Inevitable Dominance, his forearms clasped behind his back in what his species considered a pose of magnificent authority. In reality, he looked like an overgrown praying mantis trying to do a superhero landing, but there weren't any humans around yet to point that out. "Status report on the primitive world," he commanded, mandibles clicking with practiced condescension. Junior observer Kexley frantically tapped at his holoscreen. "My overlord, the planet designate Earth, shows all hallmarks of a pre-spacefaring civilization. They've barely managed to reach their own moon, and their orbital presence consists primarily of..." He paused, antennae twitching in confusion. "Weather monitoring satellites?" Zixtal's compound eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. Another easy conquest for the archives. The Craxty Empire had cleansed thousands of worlds this way. Swoop in during the awkward adolescent phase between primitive spaceflight and actual defensive capabilities, deliver the ultimatum, and watch them crumble. It was practically a science at this point. "Prepare the standard conquest broadcast," he ordered, stretching his chitinous neck joints. "And someone get me my ceremonial conquest cape, the red one with the skulls. It tests well with focus groups." As his crew scurried to prepare the transmission, Zixtal rehearsed his speech in his head. "Primitive species of Earth, tremble before the might of the Craxty Empire." "My overlord!" Kexley's voice cracked with sudden alarm. "The satellites, they're moving!" Zixtal clicked in irritation. "Moving? What do you mean, moving? Weather satellites don't..." The entire bridge rocked violently. Warning klaxons blared as tactical displays lit up like a Christmas tree, a holiday the Craxty would never get to learn about, which was probably for the best given their reaction to the concept of ugly sweaters. "Multiple impacts detected across the fleet," Defensive Coordinator Vixna shouted, her claws dancing across control surfaces. "The satellites, they're not satellites." Zixtal stumbled to the tactical display, his ceremonial cape tangling around his secondary arms. The screen showed their carefully positioned invasion fleet being systematically perforated by... Are those tungsten rods? "Kinetic orbital weapons, my overlord," Vixna confirmed, her professional composure cracking. "Thousands of them. The humans disguise them as weather satellites. They're using gravity itself as a weapon." Another impact rocked the ship. "Shields are useless," someone screamed. "They're moving too fast." "Impossible," Zixtal chittered, watching as his mighty invasion fleet was being turned into very expensive Swiss cheese by what amounted to extremely well-aimed sticks. "Their technological level, they shouldn't have this capability. They still use combustion engines." "My overlord," Kexley's voice had taken on a slightly hysterical edge. "I'm detecting transmissions from the planet. They're laughing at us." A human voice crackled through the bridge speakers. "Hey, aliens! How's that weather forecast looking? We're expecting a heavy shower of tungsten with a chance of get wrecked." Zixtal's mandibles dropped open in shock. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. Where was the panic, the awe, the groveling? He hadn't even gotten to do his speech. "Fall back," he ordered, watching as another capital ship split in half like a badly cut sandwich. "Fall back immediately." "Too late, my overlord. They've seeded the entire orbital plane with these weapons. It's like they've been preparing for this exact scenario for centuries," Zixtal finished, a cold realization settling in his thorax. "Search their cultural database. How long have they been thinking about alien invasions?" Kexley's response was barely a whisper. "My overlord, they've been making entertainment about defeating alien invasions since before they had powered flight. Something called science fiction." Another impact. Warning lights everywhere. That cape really wasn't helping with his dignity anymore. "You mean to tell me," Zixtal said slowly, watching his mighty invasion fleet being systematically dismantled by glorified space javelin throws, "that they've been actively planning how to defeat us since before they knew we existed?" "Actually, my overlord," Kexley added, somehow managing to sound even more terrified, "according to their data networks, these orbital weapons were considered one of their more conservative defense plans." The bridge fell silent, broken only by the continued impacts and warning klaxons. Conservative? Zixtal finally managed. Yes, my overlord. Apparently, they rejected the plans involving something called nuclear winter as being too messy. As the inevitable dominance began its decidedly evitable fall from orbit, High Overlord Zixtal had one final, horrifying thought. Somewhere in the galaxy, there had to be a civilization that was normal. Humans, he decided as his ship entered the atmosphere at a very unfortunate angle, were definitely not it. At least he didn't get to finish his speech. That would have been embarrassing. High Overlord Zixtal stood on the command bridge of the Craxty flagship Inevitable Dominance, his forearms clasped behind his back in what his species considered a pose of magnificent authority. In reality, he looked like an overgrown praying mantis trying to do a superhero landing, but there weren't any humans around yet to point that out. Status report on the primitive world, he commanded, mandibles clicking with practiced condescension. Junior Observer Kexley frantically tapped at his holoscreen. My overlord, the planet designate Earth, shows all hallmarks of a pre-spacefaring civilization. They've barely managed to reach their own moon, and their orbital presence consists primarily of... He paused, antennae twitching in confusion. Weather monitoring satellites? Zixtal's compound eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. Another easy conquest for the archives. The Craxty Empire had cleansed thousands of worlds this way. Swoop in during the awkward adolescent phase between primitive spaceflight and actual defensive capabilities, deliver the ultimatum, and watch them crumble. It was practically a science at this point. Prepare the standard conquest broadcast, he ordered, stretching his chitinous neck joints, and someone get me my ceremonial conquest cape, the red one with the skulls. It tests well with focus groups. As his crew scurried to prepare the transmission, Zixtal rehearsed his speech in his head. Primitive species of Earth tremble before the might of the Craxty Empire. My overlord! Kexley's voice cracked with sudden alarm. The satellites, they're moving! Zixtal clicked in irritation. Moving? What do you mean, moving? Weather satellites don't... The entire bridge rocked violently. Warning klaxons blared as tactical displays lit up like a Christmas tree, a holiday the Craxty would never get to learn about, which was probably for the best given their reaction to the concept of ugly sweaters. Multiple impacts detected across the fleet, Defensive Coordinator Vixna shouted, her claws dancing across control surfaces. The satellites, they're not satellites! Zixtal stumbled to the tactical display, his ceremonial cape tangling around his secondary arms. The screen showed their carefully positioned invasion fleet being systematically perforated by... Are those tungsten rods? Kinetic orbital weapons, my overlord, Vixna confirmed, her professional composure cracking. Thousands of them. The humans disguise them as weather satellites. They're using gravity itself as a weapon. Another impact rocked the ship. Shields are useless, someone screamed. They're moving too fast? Impossible, Zixtal chittered, watching as his mighty invasion fleet was being turned into very expensive Swiss cheese by what amounted to extremely well-aimed sticks. Their technological level, they shouldn't have this capability. They still use combustion engines. My overlord, Kexley's voice had taken on a slightly hysterical edge. I'm detecting transmissions from the planet. They're laughing at us. A human voice crackled through the bridge speakers. Hey aliens, how's that weather forecast looking? We're expecting a heavy shower of tungsten with a chance of get wrecked. Zixtal's mandibles dropped open in shock. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. Where was the panic? The awe? The groveling? He hadn't even gotten to do his speech. Fall back, he ordered, watching as another capital ship split in half like a badly cut sandwich. Fall back immediately. Too late, my overlord. They've seeded the entire orbital plane with these weapons. It's like they've been preparing for this exact scenario for centuries, Zixtal finished, a cold realization settling in his thorax. Search their cultural database. How long have they been thinking about alien invasions? Kexley's response was barely a whisper. My overlord. They've been making entertainment about defeating alien invasions since before they had powered flight. Something called Science fiction. Another impact. Warning lights everywhere. That cape really wasn't helping with his dignity anymore. You mean to tell me, Zixtal said slowly, watching his mighty invasion fleet being systematically dismantled by glorified space javelin throws, that they've been actively planning how to defeat us since before they knew we existed? Actually, my overlord, Kexley added, somehow managing to sound even more terrified. According to their data networks, these orbital weapons were considered one of their more conservative defense plans. The bridge fell silent, broken only by the continued impacts and warning klaxons. Conservative? Zixtal finally managed. Yes, my overlord. Apparently they rejected the plans involving something called nuclear winter as being too messy. As the inevitable dominance began its decidedly evitable fall from orbit, High Overlord Zixtal had one final horrifying thought. Somewhere in the galaxy, there had to be a civilization that was normal. Humans, he decided as his ship entered the atmosphere at a very unfortunate angle, were definitely not it. At least he didn't get to finish his speech. That would have been embarrassing. Play it again, General Emilia commanded, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth as she watched the holographic replay of the Craxthy fleet's spectacular failure. Lieutenant Rodriguez tried to suppress his grin as he queued up the recovered alien transmission. The hologram flickered to life, showing a rather disheveled-looking Craxthy officer. Its ceremonial armor was crooked, and what appeared to be a red cape with little skulls on it was hanging off one of its secondary arms like a defeated flag. This is emergency alert priority alpha to all Craxthy vessels in the sector. The alien's mandibles clicked frantically. Under no circumstances approach the Sol system. I repeat, avoid Sol system at all costs. The humans... There was a pause as something exploded in the background. The humans are prepared. The transmission cut to another angle as the ship's internal cameras continued recording. A younger Craxthy was frantically waving a datapad. High Overlord, you need to see this. We've decoded more of their entertainment archives. They've been theorizing about how to defeat alien invasions for centuries. That's impossible, the High Overlord chittered. Their first powered flight was barely 100 Earth years ago. Sir, look at this. Something called War of the Worlds from their year 1898. They were planning our defeat before they had internal combustion engines. And this, Independence Day, Edge of Tomorrow, Battle, Los Angeles. They've run thousands of simulations. Another explosion rocked the ship. The High Overlord grabbed a console for support, his cape now somehow wrapped around his head. What kind of species plans for battles they don't even know are coming? The archives suggest they do it for fun, sir. Fun? Fun? Planning the systematic destruction of hypothetical alien invasions is their idea of entertainment? The younger officer's antennae drooped. It gets worse, sir. Remember those weather satellites? How could I forget? My thorax still hurts from that last impact. Well, apparently they're called rods from God. The humans came up with the concept in the 1950s. They literally looked up at space and thought, you know what would be great? If we could drop giant metal sticks on our enemies really fast. The ship shuddered again. Warning lights painted the bridge in an ominous red glow. Sir, another officer called out, you should see their military documentation. These orbital weapons? They're considered primitive by their standards. They have theoretical weapons that... The officer paused, mandibles clicking in distress. Sir, they once considered nuking their own moon just to prove they could. They wanted to do what to their moon? Project A119, sir. Thankfully, they decided against it. Something about excessive showboating and unnecessarily antagonizing potential allies? The High Overlord's compound eyes seemed to glaze over. So you're telling me we attacked a species that not only plans for wars that don't exist yet, but also had to be talked out of nuking their own moon for fun? Actually, sir, the young officer added, somehow managing to sound even more terrified. According to their archives, they rejected the moon nuking plan primarily because they thought it would be too flashy. They wanted to maintain the element of surprise for, well, situations like this one. Another impact. The lights flickered. Someone in the background could be heard praying to the ancestral hive. "How?" the High Overlord demanded. "How did we miss this?" Their space program looks like it was cobbled together with spare parts and optimism. "That's just it, sir. We judge their technology by their civilian space presence, but their military capabilities..." The officer's antennae went completely flat. "Sir, they don't believe in showing their full hand. Ever. Something about strategic advantage and keeping the aliens guessing." The aliens? They meant US. They were sandbagging their entire space program just to lull potential invaders into a false sense of security? Correct, sir. And according to their military doctrine, these orbital weapons are just the first line of defense. They have contingency plans labeled last resort that are... The officer shuddered. "Sir, they have weaponized something called TikTok dances." The High Overlord's carapace visibly paled. Retreat. Full retreat. Any species crazy enough to weaponize social media trends is not to be trifled with. The transmission ended with another explosion and what sounded suspiciously like the 1996 Independence Day speech being broadcast on all frequencies. Back in the command center, General Amelia leaned back in her chair, thoroughly enjoying herself. "You know what the best part is, Lieutenant?" Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "That we successfully defended Earth?" "No," she grinned, pulling up another hologram showing the Craxthai fleet's rapidly retreating survivors. "The best part is that they still think those were our big guns. Wait until they find out about the coffee-powered antimatter experiments." "Ma'am, should we really be developing weapons powered by caffeine?" "Lieutenant, humanity's greatest achievements have always been powered by caffeine, spite, and the burning desire to prove someone wrong. Speaking of which, get me the science team. If the Craxthi were scared by rods from God, wait until they see what we can do with weaponized memes." As Rodriguez left to carry out her orders, Emilia pulled up the archival footage of the Craxthi ships being perforated by what were essentially very fast, very pointy sticks. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways. After all, why fix what isn't broken? Especially when what is broken is currently littering the Pacific Ocean in very expensive alien pieces. Somewhere in deep space, the surviving Craxthi vessels were broadcasting a new addition to their official first contact protocols. If the primitive species has an unusually large collection of fictional works about defeating alien invasions, do not invade. This is not a suggestion. They're not preparing for war. They're practicing. Dr. Krikstal, chief bioweapons engineer of the Craxthi Empire, stared at his test results with all four hands shaking. This couldn't be right. He ran the simulation again, and one more time, just to be absolutely sure he wasn't having some sort of stress-induced hallucination. Sir?" His assistant, Mexvi, poked her head into the lab. "The High Command is demanding an update on the bioweapon deployment." Krikstal chittered nervously. Tell them we may have made a slight miscalculation." "How slight?" A notification pinged on his screen. Another field report from Earth. He read it and felt his exoskeleton trying to crawl off his body in shame. "Remember how we designed the virus to target their supposedly primitive immune systems?" "Yes." The preliminary scans showed their medical technology was barely past the antibiotic stage. They still get seasonal infections, for Hive's sake. Well, Krikstal pulled up a holographic display of human biological data. It turns out there's a reason for that. These humans, they've been fighting diseases their entire evolutionary history. Their immune systems aren't primitive. They're battle-hardened war machines. The display showed footage from a human hospital. A patient was receiving the Craxthi's deadliest bioweapon and complaining that it felt kind of like that time I ate gas station sushi in Nebraska. "But that's impossible!" Mexibi's antenna curled in distress. "The virus was designed to be lethal to any carbon-based life form." "Oh, it is! To any normal carbon-based life form. But humans?" Krikstal laughed hysterically. "Humans are about as normal as a quantum physics equation written in interpretive dance. Look at this." He pulled up more data. They've survived multiple plague outbreaks, countless viral mutations, and something they call Monday morning staff meetings. Their gut bacteria alone could probably qualify for weapons-grade classification in most civilized systems. Another ping. Another field report. Crystal's color shifted to what Craxty scientists called "oh no" green. "What is it?" Mexvi asked, dreading the answer. Some of them are allergic to our bioweapon." "Allergic? You mean it's killing them?" They're allergic. They're sneezing, violently, in the direction of our troops." The implications hit Mexvi like a tungsten rod from orbit. "But our soldiers, their immune systems, were raised in perfectly sterile conditions." "Yes." Crixtal's mandibles drooped. "Remember how we thought that was a good idea? Perfect cleanliness leading to perfect health?" More pings, more reports, each worse than the last. "Our troops are falling sick," he continued, his voice hollow. "Not from our weapon, but from the common cold. Apparently, one of our soldiers got sneezed on by a human who had both our bioweapon and a mild case of the sniffles. The human complained about their allergies and went to work. The soldier is in quarantine with what their medics are calling everything all at once." Mexvi's analytical mind raced through the implications. "Are you saying our perfect bioweapon didn't just fail?" Crixtal confirmed. "It's backfiring. The humans are accidentally weaponizing it against us. Some of them are calling it spicy allergies and going about their daily lives." He brought up another report. "This human here, she got infected, made chicken soup, took something called a sick day, binged something called Netflix, and was back at work in 48 hours complaining about missing a deadline. Our soldier who got sneezed on, he's patient zero for what human doctors are calling the Great Space Flu of 2025. But our quarantine protocols are useless. The humans, they've developed something far more potent than any bioweapon. They call it workplace presenteeism. They're coming to work sick, on purpose, out of spite." The lab's emergency console lit up. High Command was calling. Again. "What do we tell them?" Mexvi whispered. Crixtal stared at the latest batch of reports. Humans treating their bioweapon exposure like a mild inconvenience, sharing remedies that range from scientific medicine to grandma's specialty that tastes like death but works miracles, and generally refusing to have their productivity impacted by something as trivial as a civilization-ending plague. "Tell them," he sighed, watching as another report came in of a human going to the gym despite being a little under the weather and accidentally creating a new patient zero. "Tell them we've discovered why humans haven't developed better immune systems." Why? They don't need to. They've weaponized inconvenience itself. Why evolve immunity when you can just be too stubborn to die? As if to punctuate his point, a final report flashed across his screen. A human complaining that the apocalyptic bioweapon was not as bad as that stomach bug that went around the office last winter, and asking if anyone wanted to grab lunch. Somewhere in the Craxty medical archives, a new entry was being added to the species threat assessment database. "Humans, do not attempt biological warfare. Their immune systems take it personally, and their work ethic is a war crime waiting to happen." Combat Analysis Unit 7249-B of the Craxty Ground Forces was having what humans would call an existential crisis. Its quantum processors, capable of calculating 1,000,000 combat scenarios per second, were struggling with a fundamental question. How did the human disable their most advanced hover tank with a rubber chicken? "Replay combat footage," it commanded. The holographic display showed the scene again. A human soldier, designation Florida Man, according to their intelligence, had approached the tank armed with what the AI initially classified as trash. The items included 1 roll of silver adhesive material, threat level negligible; 1 artificial waterfowl made of rubber, threat level absurd; 1 formal complaint letter from something called a HOA, threat level unknown. The human had then proceeded to do something. The AI's attempts to classify the actions kept returning error messages. "Alert! Logical paradox detected," flashed across its consciousness. "Human actions defy established physics." In the command center, senior combat analyst Vixthar was having a similar breakdown. Report! How did we lose an entire tank battalion to improvised weapons? Supreme Commander Zextal demanded, his mandibles clicking furiously. Sir, Vixthar's antennae drooped in confusion. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. Well, sir, in Sector 7, they disabled our hover tanks by... Spit it out, soldier. They used something called duct tape to attach rubber chickens to the sensor arrays. When the tanks tried to auto-target, the rubber chickens squeaked. The targeting AI had a nervous breakdown, trying to process why the threat assessment kept coming back as poultry. The Supreme Commander's compound eyes blinked in sequence. And the HOA letters? They slipped them under the tank's force field, sir. Apparently, the tank's hover height violated local zoning regulations about permitted structure elevation. 3 of our tank AIs actually powered down in shame. Another analyst burst into the command center, clutching a data pad like a lifeline. Sir, you need to see this. In Sector 12, they're weaponizing something called WD-40, and are those lawn chairs? The tactical display showed humans using folding lawn furniture as improvised catapults, launching cans of lubricant at the Craxty's walker units. The walkers were now doing involuntary splits. This defies all known combat doctrine, Vixthar muttered, watching as a human disabled a combat mech by throwing a boomerang wrapped in aluminum foil at it. Our AIs can't predict their strategies because there are no strategies. They're just doing things. Sir, another report came in. They've weaponized their primitive digital assistants. Someone named Karen asked to speak to the manager of our automated defense network, and now it's crying. The Supreme Commander's carapace paled as he watched the chaos unfold. A group of humans had somehow converted a civilian transport, designation food truck, into a mobile EMP generator powered by something called a deep fryer. They were following it up with psychological warfare, broadcasting something called "Never Gonna Give You Up" on all frequencies. How? He chittered. How are they doing this? Where did they learn these tactics? A junior analyst cleared their throat. Sir, according to our cultural database, they learned it from something called MacGyver and the A-Team. They're entertainment programs about humans making weapons out of everyday objects. They've been training for this since their television age. The tactical display updated again. A human had just disabled a Craxty battle robot by throwing a can of carbonated sugar water at it. The resulting sticky residue had gummed up its joints completely. Sir, Vixthar said slowly, I don't think we can win this. Our combat algorithms are based on logic and established military doctrine. The humans... He gestured at a screen showing someone using a pizza delivery drone to drop water balloons filled with glitter on their stealth units. The humans are operating on what they call vibes and winging it. Surely our superior technology... Sir, they just took out our most advanced communications array with something called a Nokia 3310. They threw it. Once. The Nokia is undamaged and still operational. Our array is in 3 pieces. The Supreme Commander watched as another hover tank spun out of control, its sensors confused by what appeared to be a garden gnome decorated with Christmas lights and playing Baby Shark on repeat. Full retreat, he ordered, his voice hollow. You can't fight an enemy that turns chaos itself into a weapon. Note in the combat logs, humans don't think outside the box. They don't even acknowledge the existence of the box. The box is irrelevant. The box has been weaponized and is probably full of glitter now. As the Craxty forces retreated, they left behind a battlefield that defied all military analysis. Combat Unit 7249-B's final report before suffering a complete logic failure simply read, humans are using combat techniques that can only be classified as shenanigans. Recommend updating threat assessment from primitive species to chaos entities with access to hardware stores. In the years that followed, the Craxty military would add a new combat doctrine. If humans appear to be improvising, retreat immediately. Their ability to weaponize random objects exceeds our ability to classify them as weapons. Also, avoid any planet where duct tape is a commonly available material. In the depths of the Pentagon's newly established Department of Alien Technology, Dr. Emma Rodriguez stared at her computer screen with the kind of maniacal glee usually reserved for mad scientists and people who'd had way too much coffee. She had both. "You're sure about this?" General Amelia asked, looking at the lines of code with suspicion. "Using Windows Vista?" "It's perfect," Emma cackled, taking another sip from her world's okayest xenotechnologist mug. "The cracks these systems are based on pure logic and perfect efficiency. What better way to break them than with the most illogical, inefficient operating system humanity ever created?" "But isn't that cruel and unusual punishment?" "We're at war, General. Besides," she grinned, "wait until you see what I installed on it." On the main screen, a progress bar crawled forward. "Installing Windows Vista. Time remaining, 2 years. No, 2 minutes. No, 47 centuries." Deep in the cracks the Central Command, Security Chief Nixtal was having a very bad day. "Status report," High Commander Zixtal demanded. "What are the humans doing to our networks?" "Sir," Nixtal's mandibles quivered, "they're installing something. Our firewalls, they're not just failing, they're having existential crises. The main defense AI just asked me if it was living in a simulation." On their screens, blue screens of death began popping up like deadly digital flowers. The cracks these quantum computers, capable of calculating the movements of entire galaxies, were being defeated by an operating system that couldn't decide if it wanted to update now or remind you again in 5 minutes. Forever. "Sir!" A junior technician's antennae went ramrod straight. They're trying to open Internet Explorer." "Mother of the Hive," Nixtal whispered. "They wouldn't dare." Back in the Pentagon, Emma was cackling as she initiated Phase 2. "Time to introduce them to peak human culture. General, if you would." General Amelia stepped up to a microphone and cleared her throat. "Attention, Cracksty forces. We've noticed you're having some technical difficulties. Have you tried turning it off and on again? No? Well, allow us to help with that. Initiating Operation Feline Feedback." The Cracksty Hive Mind Communication Network, a marvel of biotechnology that linked their entire species in perfect harmony, suddenly found itself flooded with cats. Millions of them. Every cat video ever uploaded to the internet began streaming directly into their collective consciousness. What is this?" High Commander Zixtal clutched his head as his neural implants were overwhelmed by cats knocking things off tables, cats being startled by cucumbers, cats making weird faces at bananas. "Sir!" Nixtal was practically vibrating with panic. "They're deploying something called Nyan Cat." The rainbow-trailing, Pop-Tart-bodied feline abomination began its endless loop through their neural network. The Cracksty hive mind, designed for perfect logical communication, had no defense against the pure chaos of keyboard cat. "Make it stop!" someone screamed. "The kittens! They're so illogically adorable." "Too late!" Emma shouted triumphantly, hitting the final key. "I just released every single, if it fits, I sits compilation simultaneously." The Cracksty resistance crumbled. Their mighty warships, now running on Windows Vista, were too busy trying to install defunct toolbars to maintain orbit. Their ground forces were paralyzed, their neural networks overwhelmed by an endless stream of cats playing piano and demanding cheeseburgers. "This is impossible," High Commander Zixtal muttered, watching his empire collapse under the weight of feline videos and obsolete software. "Our technology is superior in every way." "Sir," Nixtal reported, his voice distant and dreamy, as another wave of kitten videos hit the hive mind. "I think that was our problem. We made everything better. The humans. They kept all their broken things and learned to use them as weapons." The final blow came when Emma deployed what she called her nuclear option, a combination of the Windows Vista paperclip assistant and a 24-hour loop of What's New Pussycat, interspersed with one It's Not Unusual. The Cracksty surrender was total and unconditional. Their only demand, "Please, for the love of all that's holy, make the paperclip stop asking if they're trying to write a letter." In the aftermath, as the Cracksty ships limped home with their computers still occasionally playing random cat videos, humanity celebrated in its own unique way, by immediately turning the entire incident into memes. "You know what the really funny part is?" Emma said to General Amelia as they watched the alien fleet retreat. "We didn't even use the really weird stuff from the internet." "There's weirder stuff than Nyan Cat?" "Oh, my sweet summer child," Emma patted the general's shoulder. "Let me tell you about something called cursed images." The general held up a hand. "Save it for the next invasion. Although," she smiled, looking at the after-action report, "I don't think we'll have to worry about that for a while. Apparently, the Craxti have updated their official first contact protocols again." "Oh?" "Yes. It now just says, in every known language of the galaxy, if they still use Windows Vista, run. They fear neither God nor death, and their cats hold power beyond mortal comprehension." Humans, Homo sapiens. Threat level: yes, recommended, first contact protocol. Don't, species. Notes: originally classified as a pre-spacefaring civilization of mild interest, humans have since been reclassified as weaponized chaos incarnate, following the infamous Craxti incident of 2025. While not technically advanced by galactic standards, humans have demonstrated an unprecedented ability to turn literally anything, including their own technological failures, into surprisingly effective weapons. Current galactic policy regarding Earth can be summarized by Ambassador Zil Tax's famous quote, "Let them stay in their gravity well. Any species that responds to an extinction-level event by weaponizing their social media algorithms is best observed from a safe distance, preferably through a telescope, from another galaxy." Recovered Craxti archaeological record, dated 2157. We still don't understand how they did it. Our empire stood for 1 billion years, spreading across 17 galaxies. We had technology that could reshape planets, minds that could outthink quantum computers, and weapons that could unmake reality itself. They beat us with duct tape and cat videos. The humans didn't just defeat us, they transformed us into a cautionary tale. Now every young Craxti learns about the hubris of our empire and how it was undone by a species that thought turning their most broken operating system into a weapon was a logical solution to alien invasion. Overheard at the Galactic Senate, 2198. "Did you hear? Another civilization tried to probe Earth's defenses." "Oh no, what happened?" "They received a package containing a rubber chicken, a copy of Windows Vista, and a note saying, 'We can do this the easy way or the fun way.' And they chose immediate withdrawal. Smart move. Last week I heard the humans figured out how to weaponize something called dad jokes." Final note: as of this publication, Earth remains the only planet in known space with a warning label that reads, "Caution, contains humans." Side effects of invasion may include total system failure, uncontrollable laughter, and a newfound appreciation for cats. Approach at your own risk, no refunds. The humans, for their part, continue their daily lives, blissfully planning for the next invasion with the same enthusiasm they bring to planning their weekend barbecues. Some say they actually look forward to it. After all, they've got plenty of duct tape, an entire internet's worth of cat videos, and according to recent intelligence, they've managed to make something even more chaotic than Windows Vista. The galaxy holds its breath in terror.